Guardians, what is going on, guys? Sly here, back with some more delicious and fresh Warmind news for you all. And if you're a fan of the way Destiny used to progress back in the day, then guys, you are in for a huge treat. But first things first, good luck to all of those out there at the Community Summit. Represent us well, and hopefully you guys get to see a couple of awesome things. So this week at Bungie, and Deej, by the way, if you're watching this, I hate the name This Week at Bungie as well. I've always been a fan of Bungie Weekly Update. But anyways, This Week at Bungie dropped early this week on Wednesday instead of Thursday like it normally does. Now this is probably because of the Community Summit happening Thursday and Friday, and that's Community Manager territory. My guess, they're going to be pretty busy, so they dropped this early. Anyways, This Week at Bungie is up early, and it is absolutely packed full of tasty, delicious morsels. Now here recently, we've been seeing previews of some exotics that are going to be reworked as part of the exotic tuning coming in Season 3. Graviton Lance showed off some new moves with its void-seeking projectiles and damning explosions, which by the way look pretty awesome. As you can see in the clip behind you, it is pretty devastating if you're firing it into a group of ads. I can see this becoming a very, very useful weapon in ad clearing for raids and strikes. Now one thing I cannot tell yet is that if it's been changed over to a scout rifle or if it's still considered a pulse rifle. Bungie talked a few weeks ago about, changes coming to exotics, and they used this as an early example and said that it would be lowered to a 2-round burst. Also, they're going to be upgrading stability, aim assist, explosion size, and damage delivered by the more powerful shot at the end. And by the way, who could forget those Void Seekers? Well, as you can see, it does fire 2 shots in this video, but they are extremely far apart. And it's hard to tell, but it looks like they might vary from the 2 different times they shoot in this video. So I don't know if the player is simply firing twice, like a scout rifle, or if it is indeed a 2-round burst. If it is, then these shots are very, very far apart. It could be the slowest pulse rifle we're going to have in the game, but it looks interesting and fun nonetheless. Alright, so moving on to the next exotic we had a preview of, this time Skyburner's Oath, which really isn't a bad gun at all in its current state. It just really isn't worth an exotic slot. It does well with headshots, but why not use a regular scout rifle? So, why use an exotic slot when you can be using the coil instead or something like that? Now, it does come in handy in certain situations, and it's pretty powerful, like I said, if you can keep those headshots coming, but its use is rather limited. So, Bungie decided to change this one as well. Now, you can still get the slower firing, high damage perk when ADSing, but now they have a souped up version of explosive rounds attached, while ADSing or firing the hip. As you can see here, looks pretty deadly, and I can't wait to see the math on how much the explosion puts out. But this gun was always dual utility, and depending on if you're aiming down the sides or hip firing, you had 2 totally different weapons. And now, even more so. Firing from the hip still has its increased firing speed, but now when you fire from your hip, you're getting something way different. It's almost like a scaled down grenade launcher. The explosions seem bigger, they actually track your targets to their center mass, and of course it fires faster. Yet the speed of the projectile slows down considerably when aiming from the hip, as it allows you to kind of, aim better. It slows down so much so that it actually lobs a little bit, and you can actually see here it does look like a small grenade launcher. Now when you switch to aiming down the sights, projectile speeds go back to normal like a scout rifle, yet it keeps the explosion. So no matter where you hit, you're going to get the added benefit of these new larger explosive rounds. The explosions themselves don't look all that much bigger when you're aiming down the sight versus on the hip, but still, this is a gun, not a grenade launcher. Now how useful this will be, well, we'll have to wait and see how powerful it is, because judging by this video, when you're ADSing, it's pretty strong. When you're going into hip fire though, it still seems kind of weak. But as always, you never fully know until you use it for yourself. And moving on to our last exotic preview for this week, that's going to be Rat King. Now, Rat King kind of has a cult following as it is, and as it stands, it's a pretty fun gun to use in groups. But when you're by yourself, not really. So Rat King is about to get a huge change and become even better. But first, before we talk about it and look at the changes, take a look at this clip. They absolutely melted those dudes. Now granted, there's a whole group firing here, but these majors are getting drained by a sidearm. The changes to Rat King are first and foremost the proccing of its main exotic perk. It used to be that it would only proc its exotic perk when you were in a big group and you had them in hand actively using them. You could tell your group had it equipped by the eyes glowing on the rat itself. Now all it needs is to have it in your kinetic slot. No more. You can even be using your energy weapon and it will still lend itself to activating the other Rat Kings. And the best part of all, it is now full auto. After that, they front-loaded the stat benefit of Rat Pack, so they increase a bit more drastically with 1 or 2 fire team members, making it more fun to use, even with only 3 players wielding it. And finally, the Invis. Vermin will now cause you to go Invis for 7 seconds, which, unless I'm mistaken, it will be the longest Invis move within Destiny, period. I mean, Night Stalker can only go for a little over 4 seconds, close to 5, even while you're in the stat tree that extends invisibility. I mean, this is almost double that, so that will lend itself to some crazy PvP situations. They also hinted about the exotic masterwork piece of the Rat King and said it was pretty awesome, but they just kind of said it as a tease. So we'll have to wait and see what that is. But so far, it looks like Rat King is getting a pretty big buff, and when used in groups, looks like it's going to be pretty deadly. And it actually looks a little too good to be true. So much so that I'm kind of worried about it in PvP. However, I think it's going to be fun to use at the Castellum, within the Leviathan, or perhaps maybe even at the Bathers. After you dump out all of your heavy, a whole team squeezed together in the center with Rat King might take out those sensors pretty quickly after this buff. So definitely excited to see how these changed exotics will impact gameplay later in the future. Alright y'all, so next let's get to something I am really excited about, and that's leveling and progression for the next Warmind DLCs. Now, just so you know, this takes effect on May 8th. When that does, it will rework the entire game, even for newly leveled characters, and I'll get to more details here in a second. Now, I don't know about you all, but leveling in Destiny 2 was just awful. I mean, I've said it before, I'll beat it into the ground again. They catered too much to the casual player. You could hit max light just about anywhere in Destiny 2 while doing anything. And while I strongly believe you should have the options to hit max in PvP and PvE, you shouldn't be able to do it by just sitting back and collecting your clan engrams and popping in once or twice a week doing some public events. I totally miss the old days where you had to fight to make it to the top. To get the best gear, to get to the highest light, you needed to work for it, and looks like we're heading back to the good old glory days. Now, it's probably best if I just read this article word for word instead of summarizing it for you and possibly messing it up. But some quick facts before I do that. Warmind will have a soft cap of 340 and a hard cap power level of 380 max. That's going to be 385 with mods. Now, soft cap is a level you can obtain through any activity. Basically, the level you can get to using nothing but blue armor and weapons. After that, however, you have to rely on weekly engrams, raids, trials, or special events to make it all the way to the top. Now, they stress here, once again, that in order to get to the higher gear, you do not have to have it equipped. The game will see all your gear on each character and inside your vault, and drop you the highest possible out of all those possibilities. Now, I still necessarily do not believe that, because I swear once I put everything on, I get better drops, but they swear that it's true through and through. Anyways, here's where things get interesting. Quote, "Our target is that players who participate in all the weekly activities should take several weeks to reach the hard cap. Raids and trials grant the largest increases. Clan engrams provide very small increases, and all other weekly sources fall between those two. Players who do not participate in any group weekly activities are unlikely to hit the hard cap before the next release. Dedicated Omnivore players will hit it before players that just play raids or trials exclusively. Additionally, the final 10 points from 370 to 380 will be significantly slower than 340 to 370. We expect it to take players roughly equal time to go from 340 to 370 as from 370 to 380. We decided to make this change because climbing to 370 allows you to tackle endgame content without suffering a severe underlevel penalty, but creates a significant accomplishment in achieving 380. End quote. So, how awesome is this, right? I mean, this not only means that grinding will be coming back, but it will be partly for leveling and not just some random weapon or emote to pass the time. I mean, this is great news, guys. This is exactly what I was talking about when I meant satisfying progression and leveling, because the best times I've ever had in Destiny were when I was chasing down the elusive ghost in Kingsfall trying to get that max light level, or getting boots and the helmet to drop in the Vault of Glass so I could once again obtain max light. So in my personal opinion, guys, these changes absolutely thrill me, and senior designer Daniel Aukenpaul said it will take several weeks to reach the hard cap. I mean, I personally believe this is a great move. Not only does it slow us down from just destroying all the content within 2 hours, but it gives us a reason to come back and beat the raids, a reason to do strikes, trials, etc. Now, after that paragraph, he goes on to say that, quote, clan engrams offer excellent upgrades while a player is climbing to the soft cap. They should grant awards an average of 15 power higher than your current best possible while you're on the way there. This will help players catch up with their clanmates who are completing weekly activities. Once you have achieved the soft cap, your progression is only going to rely a lot more on your own achievements. Clan engrams above the soft cap will grant gear only 0 to 2 points above your own best possible. And so there you have it, an oddly timed weekly update with a huge drop of news. Now, one of my biggest complaints was due to the fact that Bungie catered too much to the new and casual player. Expanding this player base and welcoming new Guardians, I mean, that's absolutely never a bad thing. But just letting them rise to the top the easiest way possible in order to entice them in, I mean, that was one of the worst decisions I think they've ever made. How Luke Smith went from the Taken King grinding awesomeness to exotics and easy levels for everyone, well, that's beyond me. But I'm glad the live team is now taking steps in the right direction. Anyways, before I bounce out, Guardians, here's how restructuring progression will impact the rest of the game and a few changes to leveling cheats people used in the past. Quote, in an effort to combat exploits and creating new characters to take advantage of one-time quest rewards, we've decided to limit those rewards to the soft cap for the release they first appeared in. This means Destiny 2 launch quest cap at 260 before mods. Curse of Osiris caps at 300, and Warmind will be capping at 340. To compensate for their new caps, they'll give you a large boost 15 power when you earn them as long as you're below that cap. Farming exotics to increase your power has been removed. If they've dropped from a non-weekly source, they'll come out of the engram at the same power as a legendary would after you've gotten to the soft cap. We believe that changes to quest rewards and exotic farming will ensure the most effective way to reach the power cap is to only play the most challenging and social weekly activities. End quote. So there you have it, guys, and Guardians, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, how do you feel about these new steps in leveling? Love it? Hate it? Wish you could change a certain area of it? I think it's mostly all really good. They did get a little strict here with as far as, like, you know, capping stuff at the end and only giving you 0 to 2 levels every time you grab a new piece of gear. I think that's a little low. They could have done something different there, but all in all, this is an awesome step in the very right direction. They also give you enough level not to lock you out of endgame content, but yet you still have the drive to reach the hard cap, so prestige mode will completely demolish you. Also, don't forget about the changes they're making to endgame content in terms of enemy health, damage output, etc. To jog your memory, in a recent This Week at Bungie, they also mentioned some changes coming to combatants. Higher level combatants will take longer to kill in the next update, along with some other changes. So to jog your memory, currently outgoing and incoming damage scaling stops at 40 power levels above or below an enemy when compared to yours or the player's power. On top of increasing difficulty of high-level combatants, Bungie is extending damage scaling to 50 power levels. This means that when you see an endgame enemy roaming around and you're 50 power levels or more below the enemy, you will see question marks and it will be immune to your attacks. Now, this doesn't matter so much to everyone unless you're just starting Destiny 2, because you won't see such a huge gap most of the time. That is, unless you're starting the campaign or you're turning the handicap in the Nightfall. But to counteract some of these changes and give us a fighting chance of increasing enemy health and damage, you know, in the higher tier, Bungie is changing how energy weapons and shields are going to work. In Warmind, if you match your shield's weapon element to that of the enemy shield, it's going to deal 3 times the damage on top of the shield detonation. No matching element will still be effective and deal twice the damage to shields, while kinetics will see no bonus damage and should only be used on enemy once they are unshielded or the opponent has no shield at all. So enemies will be harder to kill at the upper level, but we're getting a tool to make that easier if we use it correctly. So this will make getting to max level all the more important. Since enemies will be harder to kill at the upper levels, that means we need to compensate with that with our own strength. So that means going higher level. And finally, guys, we start to come into meaningful progression. But that is really about it, Guardians. So, good news if you were a fan of the old progression days and if you liked how it was. If you don't like it, I do apologize, but I think with all the other changes coming, you might be converted to the dark side by the time you max out your character in Warmind. So, we'll just have to wait and see on that. But anyways, guys, I am out of here. As always, thank you all so much for watching and for supporting Sly Nation. Don't forget, April 24th will be the reveal stream, and you can catch it on Twitch when it happens, or if you miss it, I'll have it up on my channel later on in that day. Of course, since it's not my content, it will not be monetized, as I never monetize rebroadcasts of anything. So, once again, Guardians, thank you so much for being patient these past few months, and like I said in my last video, these multiple updates are all coming together pretty nicely, and I think we're in for a huge treat come September. Anyways, keep those eyes peeled for tons more D2 coverage, as well as Anthem, The Division 2, and another Warmind video coming out here very soon. But, until then, this is your dude Sly, and I'll catch you all next time.